A lot of times when I'm seeing an adoption, you know, people forget that threat modeling is an everyday process, so we all do it. I work with my team, and they've been building some training materials and how we take a realistic approach and perspective to help people understand what it is. We leverage, Adam's Shostak's four-question framework. What are we working on? What can go wrong? What are we going to do about it? And did we do a good job? But a lot of times, still, even thinking from those perspectives, it can still be a little bit challenging. But when you start saying, okay, what are we working on? Is I'm trying to cross the street and I'm trying to get from one point to another. And what can go wrong? Well, I could get hit by a car. I might trip and fall. Oh, the rain may come and I can get drenched. Various things that can happen to me of what can go wrong. And then, of course, what am I going to do about it? Well, maybe I've read the weather forecast and I brought my umbrella just in case it rains. I'm crossing at a crosswalk, things like that. Looking both ways before I do this. Maybe it's making, if it's at nighttime, right? What would I do with that? Make sure there's plenty of light around the area. Maybe I'm wearing reflective clothing. And then, did I do a good job as I made it across the street so I can go to that new job interview that I'm applying for? So there's just different ways that we start thinking about that. And these are opportunities on how we bring threat modeling into existing processes. We don't want to add additional burden. So when people start getting that perspective of this is something that you already do every day, it's easy to kind of take this into the perspective of you're already doing this. Now, it's a little far-fetched maybe to kind of relate that to your work. But one of the things is we want to find ways to lessen the burden. And the last thing we want to do is have the team tell us it's just another security, another thing security wants us to do. I don't know about you, but I hear that a lot, right? Oh, security wants us to do more stuff. It's their job, right? Oh, we're doing more of their job. Well, that really sets a bad precedence. And basically people are like, no, right? So when we get this happening, we have got a huge wall to then climb, and it just makes it even more difficult. I think one of the things too is you really need to understand your organization's product life development life cycles. This really goes a long way. A lot of times we may assume or think about what it is, but when you're injecting something new, even though you might find great ways to adapt this into what they're already doing, so you're not creating additional burden, you need to understand what's going on. It's not something that you bolt on. This is something that becomes part of what happens, right? I don't want, threat modeling to be this extra thing. Threat modeling and successes of it is something around making it part of it, making it part of what you do, making it a common practice. A few other points here too, Robert. You want to kind of chime in on some of things on finding the right place and kind of adding some commentary here around
Sure,
what you're experiencing and how this happens and where those
sure.
opportunities exist.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say on the poll, there was one we did add the pen testing, and I did see that there was somebody who responded to that. That's another place that's interesting. Before I hadn't really thought about it, but I talked to a friend recently where he said that's what they're doing. They are introducing threat modeling right before a pen test. It turned out for them, it worked the best. Lots of teams needed to do a pen test, and so they would say, "Hey, this is a good way to walk through what you're doing, and it helps the pen test team give them a roadmap and so forth." And so then they did put together threat models.
Mhm.
I don't advise that or recommend it for everybody, but for that team, for that organization, it worked. And so, I think just as it mentions here, find places that are natural for the organization, for their development life cycle, where it may fit, that it's exposure, but it's also part of what they're already doing, part of the things that they're already thinking about and so forth, that you can introduce this into, as opposed to something, as it mentions here on the slide, just another thing that security wants us to do.